everybody. Dr. Peter Glidden here on the 29th day of July. 29th day of July, that's Monday, I believe. Where does the time go? The 29th day of July, and it is a rather poignant day here at Fire Your MD Now. A rather poignant day here because one of the champions of alternative health freedom, in the entire world has passed away. Clinton Ray Miller, the father of health freedom, passed away on July 24th, 2013 in Cedar City, Utah. For those of you watching the live stream here, by the way, just go to YouTube and type in Dr. Glidden, and you're going to see the live stream come right on up here. Let me pull Clint Miller's picture up. There it is. Hold on, let me grab it. Clint Miller, the father of health freedom in the world, has just passed away. Surrounded by his family. Clinton was born on March 14th, 1921. By my math, that makes him 92. He lived his life as a devout Mormon and health freedom activist. He left this world on Utah's Pioneer Day. How about that? That's a big deal if you're a Mormon. The state holiday commemorating the entry of Brigham Young and the first group of Mormon pioneers into the Salt Lake Valley on July 24th, 1847. How about that? Clinton Ray was the pioneer of all pioneers, working to protect health freedom for all Americans. His conviction that health freedom should be a natural right was a big deal, and it was the foundation of his life's work. In his own 2003 words, Clinton, the eternal storyteller, describes his entry into the politics of health freedom. My life as a health freedom activist started 50 years ago in Salt Lake City, Utah. By the way, Clinton told us this story. You might remember Clinton told us this story right here on Fire Your MD Now a number of months ago. You want to check in the archives for that edition. Perhaps we'll run it later on this week. I started one of the first health bakeries in the United States. I called it Clinton's Wheat Shop. My motto was, the whiter the bread, the sooner you're dead. It was printed in bold letters on the back of my truck and on the label of every loaf of bread that we sold. We made 100% whole wheat health bread. We ground the wheat fresh every day on stone burr mills. It was made without any preservatives. Clinton began his health public freedom work when a Utah health food store asked him if he would debate fluoridation with the head of the Utah State Dental Health Division. He became a well-spoken and ardent anti-fluoride guy with 8 years of success in Utah. In 1961, Clinton was invited to represent the national health freedom in Washington, D.C., and moved his family there and became their star lobbyist. Leaders attribute the successful passage of the Proxmire Bill after a 17-year battle to Clinton Miller. The Proxmire Bill protected vitamins from drug dosage regulations and prohibited the FDA from setting upper limits for dosages for vitamins in the United States. All right, so get this. It's because of this guy's work, you know, under the auspices of the National Health Federation, the auspices of the National Health Federation, that it is possible for you now as an American, and the same thing applies in Canada, to go get vitamins at dosages which actually do some good, rather than the anemic dosages that the FDA wanted to let us have, right? The FDA does not want you to have vitamins in appropriate therapeutic dosages. The Proxmire Bill that was championed by Clinton Miller protects your ability to do that. It was a very, very big deal. So after the Proxmire Bill, he helped to pass the 1994 Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act, establishing that all dietary supplements are to be regulated as nutrients in foods and not drugs. In that effort, he became famous for his Clinton one-page faxes. Millions of faxes shut down legislative offices with Clinton's encouragement, and he considered them the torpedo weapon of the health freedom movement. This is a big deal. Clinton Miller is responsible, and I'm not going to say single-handedly because, nothing happens single-handedly anywhere in the world. I don't care what you've been told. Even just driving down the street, right? Someone had to pave the street. Someone had to pay for that. Someone had to, make sure the infrastructure that we navigate our lives through was intact. So nobody does anything by themselves, regardless of all of this lifting yourself up by your bootstrap nonsense. It's not, I'm not decrying taking responsibility for yourself, but it is impossible to do anything in the world all by yourself. You couldn't even come in the world all by yourself. It had to be the mother and the midwife and the nurses and the doctors or whomever, the obstetricians, right? In any event. I mean, even if your mother was, Native American, it's her and you, right? That's two, not one, two. In any event, I digress. Clinton Miller's life made it possible for you to go into a health food store or now online and purchase nutritional supplements at effective therapeutic doses, number one. And number two, he secured your ability to get nutritional supplements without a prescription from an MD. Imagine that. Now, there are many countries in Europe where you can't, in fact, get therapeutic dosages of vitamins without a prescription of an MD. In Austria, for example, you can't buy a vitamin without an MD's prescription. How about that? Now, these are freedoms that we've had, for 30 years in this country. The Proxmire bill, actually in 1961, so that's what, do the math, it's like 40 plus years, right? And 1994, the DSHEA, so that's 19 years, 20 years, that we have had the freedom and the ability to get nutritional supplements without having to get a prescription from an MD. That's all because of Clinton Miller. We were lucky enough to interview Clinton Miller on this show. He's been a big fan and a big supporter of naturopathic medicine, of course. Since the get-go. Dr. Wallach has worked intimately with Clinton Miller over the last 17 years. And it was in large part because of Dr. Wallach's behind-the-scenes work that the DSHEA was able to be passed successfully from all of the signatures that Dr. Wallach helped Clinton Miller to secure. This is a sad day here at Fire Your MD now, ladies and gentlemen. It's also an optimistic day, right? Because, listen, I mean, when you think back about history and how it goes, it's always one man or one woman. It's always one individual that stands out and leads the herd, right? There's always a herd. There's always people following, and there's one person in the lead. Always. And, you can accomplish great things. You can accomplish great things, especially if you're with longevity, because longevity gives you the opportunity to fall into a worldwide coalition, a worldwide grassroots family, worldwide numbers of tens of thousands of people who have your back, tens of thousands of people who think the same way that you do, a built-in support group. Imagine that. And how much is that going to cost? $10 a month. If you really want to go all in and really do this as a full-time, even as a part-time business, but as a serious business, I would recommend buying the CEO pack, and that's a $500 one-time buy-in. That's a $500 one-time buy-in, and you get $500 worth of product that you can use to sample to turn friends and family and church members and people in your life on to what we're doing. Because, nothing sells better than proof. Nothing sells better than personal experience. But my point is here, Clinton Miller's life affirms the fact that the world needs leaders. The world needs people to step up to the plate, dust themselves off, step up to the plate, and take a couple of swings. Take more than a couple of swings. Just keep swinging until you get it. So look, let Clinton Miller's life be an inspiration to you if you're a longevity person and you're having a hard time. You haven't really dialed in the enrollment method. Everybody's turning you down. You're rapidly entering the NFL club. No friends left, right? Because nobody wants to hear your song and dance about how great these nutritional supplements are. Well, guess what? Number one, they're going to die. Number two, you're going to live long and prosper. And number three, you just have to maintain the discipline, keep up the good work, because it's only a matter of time until this rolls around. It worked for Clinton Miller. It'll work for you. It's worked for hundreds of successful multi-million-dollar longevity earners. And there's nothing special or different about the people in longevity. They don't have like a secret decoder ring that you don't have. They just have perhaps a little more tenacity, perhaps a little thicker skin. Perhaps, they learned how to get out of their own way, and they were coachable. They were coachable. So look, Clinton Miller did it. Clinton Miller paved the way. I'd like to make a challenge for every Youngevity associate who's listening to this radio show now and in the future when we do recordings. Pave the way. Pave the way in your community, just like Clinton Miller did. Learn how to enroll. And I'm going to tell you the enrollment secret right now. Be interested instead of interesting. Be interested instead of interesting. Listen more than you talk. And here's the pitch. I know a doctor that says you don't have to suffer with that. If I lend you this CD, will you listen to it? If I invite you to this webinar, will you attend it? If I send you a link to this video, will you watch it? That's a yes or a no question. You just ask that over and over until you get a yes or a no, and then take the appropriate action steps. Here's the second enrollment. Listen, I'm involved with a home-based business, and I got to tell you something. It's fantastic, and I need to find 2 or 3 people to work with. I don't know if you're one of them, but I'd love to show you what I'm up to. And then you can tell me whether this is something that, you have a good feeling about, or if not, well, that's okay. But maybe you'll know somebody that this would be a good fit for after you see what it is, because I need to find 2 or 3 people to work with. Can I show you what I'm up to? If I lend you this magazine, will you read it? Success from Home magazine. If I send you a link to this video, will you watch it? One of Youngevity's numerous presentation videos. If I give you an 800 number for a group phone call, a blitz call, will you just call it up and listen? This is all we have to do, ladies and gentlemen. The less you talk, the better it is. The more you listen, the better it is. So let Clinton Miller's life be an inspiration to you and get out there and get the job done. I'm Dr. Peter Glidden, 866-582-9933. Give me a call. Taking your calls when we come back. Stick around. Dr. Peter Glidden here with a live edition Monday, July 29th, 2013. Monday, July 29th, 2013. 866-582-9933. That's the number to call to speak with me live. 866-582-9933. Just like Anissa in Salt Lake City, appropriate that we'll be getting a call first today from Salt Lake City. Thanks for the call, Nisa. You are live.
Hi, Dr. Glidden. Thanks for taking my call.
You're welcome.
I have a son who is 14 years old. Last September, he was diagnosed with lupus. The doctors sent him straight to the rheumatology specialist, and I point blank asked him, can changing his diet, can taking, supplements and things like that help with him? And he said, no, absolutely not. He said, this is a chronic condition. He's going to have it his whole life, and all you can do is manage the symptoms and take all these medications. So he sent us home with, of course, some Loxicam, Plaquenil, prednisone. My son took it probably for about 3 weeks, and I said, okay, absolutely not. This is not even my child anymore, And I got with my brother, who is into the Youngevity movement, and he sent me your webinar on lupus. So we ordered all of that stuff. I decided, I'll only take him back every 3 months to get his blood work done. So I started him on Youngevity in November. Saw him improve drastically. Took him in January to get blood work done. Told them that I wasn't medicating him with their medications, that I was treating him in a different way. They weren't really happy, but they got his blood work back, and it had all gone from being not great to being so normal. They were so amazed. They called me up and said, his blood work is great. He still shows signs that he does still have, lupus in his system, but whatever you're doing, keep doing it. It's working. And I just started laughing, and I didn't tell him, at the time what it was. He came back in April. He lost a little bit of weight. He's only about 4'11", so he was probably about 83 pounds. And that, I looked up his BMI. For him, that was completely normal.
Yeah, that's right in the range.
Yeah, they were concerned. They're like, oh, my goodness, he's lost all this weight. And I said, but he's perfectly fine. He's healthy,
Right.
And they were like, you really need to have him on the meds. You really, he needs to be on the Plaquenil. He really needs to be on this stuff. And I said, but he's not having any problems. He's fine. So I took him to the doctor this last week, and they put him in the hospital.
Whoa, 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 whoa. All right, all right. So they put him in the hospital.
They put him in the hospital.
Why? What was their excuse for putting him in the hospital?
They were extremely worried about his nutrition, yet he's still within his BMI.
So they thought that he was underweight even though he wasn't underweight.
Yes.
And that was the excuse that they used to get him into the hospital. By the way, this was what? When did this happen?
This last Tuesday, I took him to the pediatrician.
Well, that's why, because the pediatrician has a responsibility to fill so many beds in the hospital every month. So the absolute worst time for anybody to bring to go to the doctors is at the end of the month, in the last week of the month, because they're going to hospitalize you for a hangnail, for goodness sake, and they'll look for any reason whatsoever to stick somebody in the hospital. So the kid, even though according to the height, weight, metabolic index, the child is fine, the doctor thinks, oh, he's low weight, and so we have to hospitalize him right away because he's got lupus, huff and puff. Is that what happened?
That's what happened. He wasn't even flared up. He wasn't showing any signs. They stuck him in the hospital last Tuesday. They took like 30 vials of blood work off my kid. The blood work came back, actually, and it showed that his lupus was normal. His blood work was normal.
So there had been no change in the blood work whatsoever. There was no real objective reason to hospitalize the kid. And I'm going to bet you 25 cents that when they stuck him in the hospital, they also started loading him up with drugs. Did they do that?
They loaded him up with prednisone, Plaquenil, against my wishes.
Unbelievable. Against your wishes. How old is this child?
He's 14. They would never medicate him when I was there. When I had to leave, they'd always come in and put something through his, he has an IV in his hand. And they were like, well, he needs to stay here. He needs to gain a few pounds. I had the doctors show me his blood work and compare all the blood work. And they showed me his levels, and they were perfectly fine. And I looked at her, and I said, those are within your limits. Why are you drugging him? She says, well, when children come in with lupus, we're treating the nutrition, but we have to treat his lupus also.
Stick with me, Nissa. Stick with me. Oh, my God. This is like, I've been telling you, ladies and gentlemen, what do you need to do? You need to fire your MD now. And here we've got direct, first-hand experience. Stick around, folks. There's more to come. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Dr. Peter Glidden here with another live edition of Fire Your MD Now. Now, listen, if you're listening to the podcast, if you're in an automobile, pull over to the side of the road. If you're in a truck, find a truck stop, pull over to the side of the road, get off at the next ramp. Because when you listen to this story from Nissa from Salt Lake City, if your blood ain't boiling, well, I don't know, you must be a Borg or some type of android or something. So let me give you a kind of a little background on this story as far as I know it. Let me pot Nissa up again. All right, Nissa, are you back with me?
Yeah, I'm here.
All right, good. So your son is 14 years old.
Yes.
And how long has he been dealing with, physical conditions that they then diagnosed as autoimmune thyroiditis?
It was probably sometime around April of 2012. He would get up in the morning and he'd have trouble walking, and him being his age, I just said, it's not probably just growing pains,
Right.
He started a rash on his body that, nobody could explain to us. And then he went over the summer to New Mexico, and he got with his dad, and he got a 3rd-degree sunburn on his face. And it seemed like from there that just took off. So
yeah, okay, good. So when you started him on the longevity supplements, what were the... Okay, and what give me some specifics about what you saw improve.
Everything improved. He could move better. There was less joint pain. He wasn't running the fevers. He wasn't sweating at night. The fatigue wasn't bad. Before that, honestly, on their medications, he would stay in bed for days and days. He couldn't get up.
Really?
Yeah, and they told me, it was really, what they told me when they first diagnosed him, they said, oh no, he's a boy. This is so rare in boys, and, it's so much worse in boys, and usually by the time they're in their 20s, they're on dialysis, and they're getting kidney transplants. They just really talked this horribly, to me, and as soon as I started him on the longevity, everything seemed to come back up, and he, like I said, I've seen the blood work. He went to completely normal blood work, And then when I told them what I was doing, because I was honest with them, I said, no, he's not taking your medication. You know, I said, your side effects, the side effects of the prednisone alone were just horrible for him.
Right.
And I said, you know, no, there's another way to do this. I said, I know there's another way to do this that works. And I knew I could prove it to him in the blood work. And that's why I said I only take him in every 3 months just to get blood work. And they can't explain to me why. I point blank called them all on it and said, from November to January, what happened that his blood work got completely normal? Well, we don't know. He could have just gone into remission. And I said, no, I will tell you what happened. I said, I took him off of all your meds, and I started him on all of this other stuff. I said, and look what happened. And, of course, you know, they don't say anything after that. They're just like, well, you know, they move on to something else, you know.
Well, see, that's all right. So bring me up to speed with the latest. Now they put him in the hospital for no reason whatsoever, just to, you know, make the doctor's hospital admitting credits come up to speed ostensibly. So now your child's in the hospital, and they start giving him the drugs again, but only when you're not there, because they know you're going to pitch a fit if they do it while you're there. So how long was the child in the hospital before you got him the heck out of there?
He was admitted last Tuesday, and they finally let him go on Friday morning because they couldn't keep him any longer. And I was like, you're going to let him out. You know, I said, I'm done with this. He's fine. They showed me his blood work. I said, I'm looking at this with you. I said, you guys made him worse. I said, look at his blood work when he came in. You're telling me this was all within normal limits. I said, now look at his white cells. Look at his CBCs. I said, it's all elevated. So high that it's not normal. I said, you guys made him worse. Why? Well, that's just what the medication does. And he, you know, they... Go ahead.
I mean, I'm flabbergasted here that they actually said that to you. So it's like there's this giant disconnect between reality, because they have this idea in their head that, oh, you know, this particular illness is an incurable illness, and everybody that has this illness has to go on the drugs. And so they have evidence right in front of their face with brand new blood work that shows everything's normal. And then they admit the child because they're idiots. And then on their program, his blood work gets worse.
Exactly.
And then you show that to them and bring it to their attention, and they say, oh, well, that's just how it is, dearie. We know what's best. You don't know what's best. And that, to me, is, I mean, it is just the tip of the iceberg of what's going on here all around the country. And, you know, we wonder why we have a healthcare crisis. We wonder why the economy is melting down. We wonder why medical costs are skyrocketing, because MD-directed medical therapeutics for chronic disease don't work. It's a ship of fools driven by a fool who's blind. And I got to tell you, man, Nisa, my heart goes right out to you. And this is, you know, this is such a poignant story, because it is so, I mean, this is just last week that all of this stuff happened, right? Just last week. So did they make any noise about Child Protection Services or anything like that?
I'm waiting for that because of some of the stuff they wrote down in the notes. They keep telling me that he's going to end up with organ damage. And I said, in 8 months, every test you've run on this child has said that there's no organ damage. I said, you tell me how that's possible in 8 months of not taking your medication, and this child is not to have any organ damage. I said, I'm doing something right. I said,
well, you know, you're right.
Within a few months, his organs should have been trashed, according to you guys, I said.
Correct. And so they move the goalposts all the time because they're full of crap. They are 100% full of crap. And, you know, and then the thing that's flabbergasting to me is, you know, it takes a little bit of smarts to be able to make it through medical school. They don't just let anybody into medical school, number one. And number two, you know, it's not a difficult thing to do, but, you know, you have to apply yourself and think, and, you know, you have to get through the coursework. And so people who are licensed physicians, they're not stupid. Right? They're educated and they're smart. And yet, even though they're educated and they're smart, they have evidence directly in front of their face that goes contrary to what they've been taught, and they overlook it. It's like their eyes glass over, they don't see it at all. And
yeah,
this,
they
I
won't
think...
even listen.
No, they won't even listen. And this is, you know what this is like, Nissa? This is like trying to tell somebody who's in the Ku Klux Klan that African Americans are really people and they're not animals. Because they believe that blacks all around the world are animals. They're no different than animals, and that was the whole reason that slavery was put in place for so many years, because there was a paradigm that, oh, those blacks, they're not really people, they don't have souls, and they're animals, and so you can treat them like animals. And to tell somebody who has that mindset something different, even though you have evidence to the contrary, they're not going to see it, they're going to overlook it, which is why I strongly advise everybody in this listening audience, everybody in the freaking world, to fire your medical doctor. Because not only do they have nothing for you in the treatment of chronic disease that's of any positive benefit, they have lots of nonsense for you if you're foolish enough to set one little pinky toe inside their office or inside their hospitals. The only time to see these people is if you're bleeding to death, if you have a broken bone or some type of trauma. All right, but I'm assuming that your story's not over. So all right, so bring me up to speed with what's happening today.
Okay, so they sent all their dietitians in, and they were trying to give him Boost and trying to give him Ensure, and I kept telling him he can't have that. You're not giving that to him. This child gained 8 pounds in 3 days just off their crap food from the hospital. Okay?
Right.
Now, that alone is not healthy, okay? He had so many intestinal problems after that because he's not used to that food.
Right.
So I know more.
Let me guess, were they giving him French fries in the hospital?
French fries, corn dogs, pizza,
unbelievable.
Fried fish.
Fried fish.
Anything he wanted, he could order 24/7 from their cafeteria.
Unbelievable.
It was horrible. So, I mean, their dietitian came in, and I know more about nutrition than that lady did, because I was like, you really think this stuff is healthy? I was like, have you read the ingredients in this stuff, you know? So then they sent their child psychiatrists in.
Oh, you've got to be kidding me.
No, I am so not kidding. And they would come and see my son Ryan when I wasn't there. And he told me, he said, Mom, they keep trying to get me to say I'm depressed. He said, but I'm not depressed. They keep trying to put it in many different ways, and they're using big words, and they, I keep telling them I'm not depressed, but they keep trying to tell me I am depressed. So when I talked to the child psychiatrist, he got really upset with me, and he said, well, what is your problem with these medications that are going to help your son? And I said, 1, these medications are poison. They're not going to help my son. I said, 2, I'm helping my son better than any of that stuff is helping. I said, and 3, I said, the damage you're going to do to my son in 6 months when you come up and tell me that his liver is damaged from what you're giving him, I said, then you're going to have to stop the medication, try to give him some other medication to fix his liver. And the guy looked at me, and he just yelled at me, and he says, you can't worry about what's going to happen in 6 months because you may not even be here tomorrow.
Unbelievable.
That came from a psychiatrist.
Yeah, well, psychiatrists believe that consciousness is a function of biochemistry. Psychiatrists believe that your consciousness is a function of your biochemistry, and that your soul does not exist, and that there's no inherent spiritual essence in the human being, that everything's this giant biochemical soup that they have to manipulate with man-made synthetic drugs when people are, not in their right minds according to them. Honest to God, this is just unbelievable to me. Now, thank God, do you live in Utah?
I live in Salt Lake City, yes.
Yeah, okay. So Utah is a state in which naturopathic medicine is licensed. Is that correct?
I can't find any under my insurance, but I do believe there's some here, and that's part of my question I wanted to ask you today, is that my worry is they are going to get with social services because they wrote down in the discharge notes that the mom is non-compliant. They're saying here that he was admitted for weight loss and depression, but they're saying that I refuse to medicate him and that he has become depressed.
Which is a lie.
Which is a lie, but they have that in his file now.
Yeah,
which is that in his medical record now.
Yeah, it's unbelievable to me that this should happen. You know what I would do? I would be proactive on this, and I would get with a lawyer, and I would be proactive about this. I would file a complaint against the hospital for something. I mean, there's got to be a complaint in here somewhere for misrepresenting your child's welfare on the chart. Because the child's not depressed, and they asked him 1,000,000 times whether he's depressed or not, and then regardless of what he says, they write down that he's depressed because, this is like communist Russia, for goodness sake. So what you need to do is get with a licensed healthcare provider in your state who is of holistic orientation, get under their care immediately so that if Child Protection Services does come after you, you have something in your quiver. And we're coming up against a hard break here in about a minute. If you stick around on the phone, I'll talk to you off the air, and I'll see if I can't, triage this for you with some type of hooking you up with some type of medical professional, holistically oriented in the great state of Utah. Nissa, I got to give you a great big Dr. Glidden round of applause here. And again, my sounds are not working for some reason. Wouldn't you love that? Well, look, this is my hat goes off to you for, number one, for taking a stand for your son's health. Number two, for standing up for what's right. Number three, for having common sense. Number four, for not being manipulated by the men and the women in the white coat. Number five, for having the wherewithal to work outside of conventional medicine to bring about a change. This is the beginning for you. This is the beginning for you. I see a book in here. I see a Hollywood movie. I see something in here, for goodness sake. This is the best story and the worst story I've heard in the last 3 years. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Dr. Peter Glidden. This is Fire Your MD Now. Back with more after these messages. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Dr. Peter Glidden here, finishing up the first hour. I wanted to give Nissa the entire run of the first hour here because this is just it's an unbelievable story, right? So I want to do this little rundown about systemic lupus erythematosus, which was the presumptive diagnosis here. Lupus is thought to be an autoimmune disease, and we in the holistic health community do not believe that the body is creating antibodies against itself. There's an antibody that's present when somebody has the clinical signs and symptoms of lupus, but the MDs have jumped the gun and they believe that the disease is caused by the antibody. They believe that the disease is caused by the antibody, that somehow the body has decided to chew itself up, and it's created this antibody, and now the antibody is destroying the body's own tissue, and, we're off to the races. This is kind of like thinking that firemen cause fires because, well, son of a gun, the bigger the fire, the more firemen, right? So therefore firemen must cause fires. Or it's thinking like the sun goes around the earth because you look outside and what do you see? You see the sun moving. Well, the sun's moving around the earth. Well, no, 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 and no. And because MDs are intellectually cowardly, nobody ever questions what they were taught in medical school. So one medical doctor years ago in some research facility somewhere determines that the antibody found present in systemic lupus erythematosus is the causative factor of the illness. He doesn't supply any evidence to support that supposition, and then all the MDs fall in line in lockstep behind him, and nobody questions it because they're all idiots. Well, they're not idiots, but they're cowards. They're intellectual cowards, and, they make stuff up as they go along. They move the goalpost, as you just heard. This is an unbelievably poignant story, especially coming today on the heels of Clint Miller's death. So, what happens from our point of view, from the correct point of view? Now, remember, this hasn't been documented and proven beyond a statistical uncertainty because the naturopathic profession doesn't get tens of millions of dollars to do medical research. Only the drug companies get that. But, we have common sense and we have street smarts and we have clinical experience and we know what we know and we apply what we know and we see what the heck happens and here's what we think happens. There's a chronic, low-grade inflammatory process happening 24/7 in some people's bodies. Well, in most people's bodies, but in some people it really gets legs. So Nissa's son was eating all the wrong food all the time, didn't know it, was born with a nutritional deficiency because Nissa's obstetrician had no idea about medical nutrition, had no idea about the 90 essential nutrients. So she trusted the wrong people. So her child is born in a body that is weak. Why? Because it's nutritionally deficient. And it's growing up for 14 years with nutritional deficiencies, which are not being met. And so one thing follows the next, and inflammation happens somewhere in the body, not because there's a bad gene, not because there's an antibody, but because the body has simply run out of the nutrients it needs to maintain its integrity, and the child is unwittingly eating foods that are inflammatory day after day, after week, after week, after month, after year. Something's got to break. So something breaks. The body breaks at its weakest link. In this case was the thyroid, I guess. So now the thyroid's in trouble because there's chronic 14 years of low-grade inflammation. Ever seen a dead animal on the side of the road? You turn it over. What do you see? Worms. They're eating it up. This is nature taking care of rotten flesh. Well, the same thing happens in the body. When there's a chronic inflammatory process in the body for decades, the body has dead and diseased tissue that it tries to get rid of. And how the heck does it do that? By creating an antibody. The antibody is ostensibly chewing up the dead tissue that was caused by the chronic inflammation, but the MDs come late to the party. They only see the inflammation that's present now and the presence of the antibody, and because they're stupid, pig-headed, blinders on, I only believe what Pfizer Pharmaceutical tells them, they make the wrong determination. It's the chronic inflammation that causes the presence of the antibody. The antibody is present because of the disease. The antibody is not causing it. So what do we do in a situation like this? Number one, eliminate the 10 bad foods. Number two, one anti-aging healthy start pack for 100 pounds of body weight per month. Number three, one bottle of selenium per 50 pounds of body weight per month. One bottle of minerals a month, one bottle of extra calcium a month, liquid Osteo FX Plus, and a diet that's high in antioxidants. Triple Treat chocolate sounds like a good idea for me. And to manage joint pain, CM cream topically. That's what we do to support the body's ability to optimize its function. If you're not angry, you're not paying attention. I'll be taking more calls when we come back in the second hour.